Today we begin our quest to complete the Pentagon Challenge. But what does that exactly mean? Let me explain. Because this is arguably the hardest challenge to complete on Football Manager. And that's because you have to win the 5 different Champions League trophies across 5 different confederations around the world. All while starting unemployed with 0 coaching badges and Sunday League experience. Which is why the Pentagon Challenge is known as the Ultimate Football Manager Challenge. So let's begin. So to kick things off, I thought without all the qualifications and experience, I need to find advantages in other ways. So I made my Sunday League manager bold, just like all the best managers in the world. Of course, I have loaded leagues from all 5 continents, including the lower divisions, to give us the best chance at the start, which as you can see opens up a phenomenal amount of teams around the world that are looking for a manager for their club. But I'm just happy to apply to all. And this next part is the hardest of the Pentagon Challenge: obtaining the first job. And although there are plenty of rejections, our first invite for an interview arrives from a club in the Tunisian 3rd Division. However, it seems like I'm going to be very busy because the number of interviews that come through are enormous. And this honestly took me close to an hour to go through each individual interview. But soon after, there were a lot of teams approached me to become the manager of their club, and as well as other job interviews. So I assessed them all, and the offer I finally accepted was a role in Egypt. Asiat Petroleum, a club in the 2nd tier of Egypt, willing to take a chance on me as their new manager. And literally one of the first things I did was optimistically ask them to pay for a first coaching badge for me. But unfortunately, they rejected, which left me still very underqualified. I had bigger problems, however, because I only had 3 contracting players, with the best being fortunately a very good striker. And right now, there's no money at the club or anything in the transfer budget or wages to sign anybody new. Despite all of this, the club is still predicted to finish mid-table and currently exceeding that in 6th position. So let's see how we do our first job in the Pentagon Challenge. Well, we actually did really well and took the club to a 4th place finish. However, this is way off top spot. And with only 1 guaranteed promotion spot, this is going to be very difficult to manage to get out of this division. There are a lot of jobs popping up elsewhere around the world, but nothing that is quite grabbing my attention just yet. Plus, they are literally going to pay for my first ever coaching badge, so I might as well stick around. Before the next season started, however, I had a huge job on my hands. Because once all the loan players returned, it left me with just 4 players, including one who's absolutely awful and a 37-year-old goalkeeper. So with recruitment being very important, I started to hunt down some new talents to help us achieve promotion this season. Included a new star striker from Argentina who, as a free transfer and only on £170 per week, is an absolute steal. And so after a lot of hard work in the transfer window, we finally have a squad big enough to field a full team and some substitutes and even some reserves. And yes, we've had to really lean into the loan market again to find better quality players, but our best players are actually our own, including the 2 strikers and the center attacking midfielder who could do wonders for us from Brazil. We are playing a 4-4-2 narrow diamond, which has been working quite well for us at the start of the season so far. We're currently in 5th place, but at the start here, we didn't really have a lot of players. So I kind of understand why we were getting beaten. It wasn't until around about here where we actually started fielding a fully strength side. So let's crack on then with season number 2 in our attempt to gain promotion to the top flight. Well, from September we went on a lovely unbeaten run until the defeat in the 5th round of the Egyptian Cup, and that has seen us shot up in the league to 2nd place and chasing the leaders. More good news as well, as the club are covering the £500 to pay for the next coaching badge, the National B licence. And just look at that attribute growth already. Our confidence was high as we actually beat the team sat top of the league 4-0. However, we could be in with a bit of a showdown with them, as the next fixture we have against them is the last game of the season, and right now there's just a point between the 2 of us. Our recruitment though was way too good, and our striker was scoring world-class goals just for fun. And we tore through the fixtures with ease, and with just 2 games left, we were top of the league table by 6 points, needing just 1 point to clinch promotion. But we went slightly more emphatic and we won the next game 8-0 instead, becoming champions of the 2nd division in Egypt with a game to go, with both of our strikers scoring above 30 goals this season. And as much as we dominated that 2nd division, I don't think the same is going to happen in the 1st division because they have very strict rules. You see, promotion from the Egyptian 2nd division takes you into the top division in Egypt, where the likes of Pyramids, Al Ahly and Zamalek are, which are teams you've probably heard of. But the rules in this league, we're going to struggle with, because you can only play a maximum of 4 foreign players in your starting 11. And if you take a look at our squad, by nation, yeah, we've got a lot of Egyptian players, but our best players, they aren't Egyptian. So to keep hold of these players is going to be vital, but we can only play 4 of them in our starting 11 or in our matchday squad. The rest of them have to be Egyptian. And if you go, again, by our best players, the ones that are Egyptian, they're only on loan. And so that leaves us with a lot to think about on whether we stay with Asiat Petroleum or try to move to another club. After all, we have to think about the Pentagon Challenge first and foremost. Will staying at Asiat Petroleum help us achieve our goals quicker, or would it be better to try and find a club with a better setup for us to go to and go on and win the Champions League? But that obviously depends on our qualifications and reputation as well. Because despite winning the league in just 2 years, we don't have the best attributes to go with our very small CV. However, on the jobs list, looking for a new manager is one of the biggest African clubs around from Morocco, Wydad Athletic Club, who fired their manager after missing out on the title by a point. So I did indeed apply. This club has already won 4 African Champions Leagues in their history. In fact, they are the current title holders just before ES Tunis just lifted it this season against the Egyptian side, Al Ahly. But the likelihood of a club like that taking a chance on us this early on is very slim. I was correct, and they very gracefully rejected me, as well as another club with a higher reputation. So it seems like we're not quite there yet in terms of the best teams in Africa, but I think it just takes obviously a little bit more time and experience and maybe overachieving with the club that we're at, or maybe a club on a lesser level before we get to that point. Speaking of clubs at a lesser level, there are some other jobs that we can apply for and have done. Like with the Egyptian club Farco, who are already in the top division, but again are concerned about the lack of experience I currently possess. And that interview proved unsuccessful as well, so I guess we're just going to stay put right now. See what happens. Can we survive in the top division of Egypt in this 3rd season? Well, if we are going to stay, we might as well gain more coaching badges. However, this time round, they aren't as willing until I manage to convince the club that this is really important, and they finally agree. The transfer window, though, was full of surprises, including signing an excellent Egyptian midfielder from Hoffenheim called Kambala. And with us being knocked out of the Egyptian Cup early, we can just solely focus on the league this season and surviving, which does have us actually predicted to do so in 13th place. However, another thing that I didn't anticipate to be such a problem is going to be qualifying for the African Champions League. By the looks of it, you have to win the Egyptian League to qualify for it, because 2nd place only puts you in the Confederations Cup, and that is depending on the winner of the Egyptian Cup, which we've already been knocked out of. The Confederation Cup obviously is like the Europa League. If you win that one, then yes, you qualify for the Champions League. But just to have one Champions League qualification in a whole league division, which, by the way, is the highest reputation league in Africa, that seems slightly unfair. It does seem like, however, that Egyptian clubs tend to be the favourites in these competitions, because Zamalek from Egypt also actually won the Confederations Cup this season just gone, which means that they now have, or Egypt now have, 2 clubs in the African Champions League playing next season. But for us to do that, we're going to have to survive just this 1st season alone, and with that 4 foreign player rule, it's going to be a lot harder than what I thought. I signed a really good goalkeeper, forgetting that I needed the foreign player rule, and yeah, now we've got loads of foreign players that don't even get into the side, including Galomba if you go by our best 11. But thankfully, I did find a really good secondary striker from Egypt, and he's not amazing. He's just a decent player at this level with good physical attributes, which I found to be what I'm going for. I'm going for players with great physicals to try and hopefully get away from the fact that they're terrible at technical attributes. So let's see if that method of recruitment can help us survive and maybe thrive in the 3rd season at this club. Well, surprisingly, although we really struggled to begin with, we found our feet and went on a nice little unbeaten run to fly up the league table into 5th spot. Still some way off 1st place though. However, there's some more good news, because the club accepted my request once again to study for the next coaching badge, and it's the Continental C license, which they have back for me to do so for the next 4 months. And although the form dropped after the winter break at times looks rather worrying as well, we still managed to clinch a very respectable 6th place finish in our first season in the top flight of Egypt. And it's one of our original players, Goma, who has been the star man this season and leading goal scorer, taking the step up in leagues with ease. And that surprise season genuinely makes me curious as to whether we can take this club to the African Champions League with some smart recruitment before next season. Because unlike last season, there's only one club in Africa that kind of looks appealing, but I think I'd rather just stay put. I must admit, it's really starting to sink in the magnitude of this task, as we are nowhere near close to winning one of the 5 Champions Leagues yet. And so if you're in this for the long haul alongside me, then please consider smashing that subscribe button. Let's see if we can get to 150k very soon. Another end of the season, however, and another chance to ask for more coaching badges. And this time, no persuasion was needed, and for the next 6 months, I'll be studying for my Continental B license. What was more important this summer, though, was the recruitment. I needed to get that right if I was to put up any kind of title challenge. So I mainly focused on squad depth, and I brought in as many cheap Egyptian players as I could, within my budget and for a cheap wage, mainly transfer listed players from the clubs in my league. I did, however, take a gamble on an out-of-contract South African midfielder who instantly becomes our best player at just 18 years old. This kid could be game-changing for us. And he sits at the top point of our narrow diamond formation, which we are sticking with this season, with Goma and SM up front that can hopefully keep banging in the goals. And yeah, possibly we could have an outside chance of winning the league. The season preview, however, doesn't think this is possible at all. But I'm very determined to prove them all wrong with what I think is a very good squad now. And that seems to be exactly what we were doing as we approached the winter break flying high at the top of the league by 6 points. It also meant that as soon as I could, the board was sending me on a 12-month course of study for my Continental A license. And with those results, we were gaining reputation fast as a manager, which also showed up in our attributes too. However, once again, our form took a dip with 1 point from 4 games going towards the end of the season, and Zamalek took our top spot with 4 games remaining. But a win from behind against Al Masry, followed by a 1-0 win with Mafumolo getting the only goal to put the pressure on. And thanks to a late run in the Champions League, Zamalek dropped points, allowing us to sneak ahead by just 1 point with 2 games remaining. We kept plugging away, and in the next match put in a strong 2-0 away win from home against Pyramids with 2 fantastic goals by our strikers. But Zamalek also won 3-0, meaning the league title will go down to the final game of the season. What we didn't need was to go a goal behind, which is exactly what we did from the penalty spot. However, in the second half, a penalty of our own was dispatched, followed by the 3rd penalty of the game to give us the lead. And with seconds left on the clock, while holding on to our lead, knowing that Zamalek was also winning their game, we finished the race off with a 3rd goal. And with that, we lifted the Egyptian Premier League title, which will guarantee us a spot to qualify for the African Champions League next season, which is the first step in the ultimate goal of completing the Pentagon Challenge. The summer was all about bringing in players for Asiat Petroleum ready for the African Champions League qualifiers. Yes, that's right. Despite us winning the Egyptian Premier League, we still have to go through qualifiers to actually make the group stage. Thankfully, the club that we've got to face in just the preliminary round is Costa del Sol from Mozambique, and I kind of think we should have an advantage there, especially because we've recruited some new Egyptian players I think could really help this side, including Mohamed here, who is a 3.5-star midfielder, really good on the ball as well with 14 passing ability. Sharkia, who is a fantastic centre-back for us, gives us a lot of depth in there too, as well as Kareem Al-Taib, who is a fantastic striker with all 13s and 14s that can hopefully score some more goals for us. And he actually scored the first goal in that qualifying first leg in a game we went on to win 3-0 at home. And we cruised through to the second round of the qualifiers as we won the second leg 2-0. Going on to face Rwandan side Ryan Sports in the next round. But that proved to be an even easier tie as we breezed past them 10-2 on aggregate. The groups were then drawn, and winners of the African Champions League last season, Zamalek, who we're all too familiar with, are drawn into our group Group C, alongside Al Hilal of Sudan and TP Mazembe from Democratic Republic of Congo. Just before our first fixture, which was against Zamalek as well, we have been on a seriously good run in the Egyptian Premier League and currently unbeaten and 4 points ahead of Zamalek, who have had a game in hand. A very interesting offer came through of an interview from Sundowns in South Africa, who last season won the South African League and are currently in the relegation scrap after 12 games. I checked and they failed to qualify for the group stage after being knocked out by the Tunisian champions ES Tunis in the African Champions League, however. So as interesting as that job offer was, of course I didn't entertain it. And so it was time for our first game in the African Champions League group stage, and it's Zamalek, who are the more experienced side, and they take the lead. However, we are there for a reason, and after 15 minutes later, we find ourselves an equaliser and look for sure to be offside, but it was given anyway. So we will take the 1-1 draw for now. The second fixture was away to TP Mazembe, and there was just one goal all game, and thankfully it was scored by our midfielder Ashraf, which gives us 4 points to start things off for us, but Zamalek batter Al Hilal of Sudan 6-0 to take the top spot for now. Meanwhile, the extra competition forced us into a rocky patch, dropping points and allowing Zamalek a chance to strike ahead of us in the league with their game in hand. In positive news, however, the club has paid for us to study for our Continental Pro license. Next up in the Champions League, we head to Sudan to face Al Hilal, and a huge defensive error led to them taking the lead on the 81st minute. And just 2 minutes later, the team that got battered 6-0 by Zamalek go 2-0 up with just 7 minutes left on the clock. So being that we were the favourites to win this tie, we continue to push, and in the 91st minute, striker Assam gave us hope in injury time. And straight from kickoff, we won the ball back immediately and played Assam through on goal to pinch a late equaliser. I feared the worst, however, that put us top of the group as shockingly, Zamalek travelled to TP Mazembe and was defeated 1-0. It was the winter break next, but as we returned, we got our work cut out for us as Zamalek are 5 points clear of us in the Egyptian Premier League. But it was an easy victory for us at home to TP Mazembe in the Champions League. However, our fellow Egyptian opponents in our group also pick up a big win to keep the pressure on, which is something we are failing to do in the league as we lose the game before we play Zamalek in the Champions League, meaning we give them an extended lead at the top now, 8 points. Now, earlier on, I glossed over transfers quite quickly, but I failed to mention arguably the best in the Egyptian midfielder Sam Morsy on a free transfer as he left playing in England for Ipswich. He had a big injury, but now he's back in the side. However, against Zamalek, we were easily the second best in Cairo in the away fixture of the Champions League. We finally got ourselves into the score sheet after we were already 2 goals down, but they were relentless as they always seem to be, and they scored more goals, giving us a 4-1 defeat. And with TP Mazembe getting a good result to the Sudanese side, it meant we need to beat their result on the final fixture to qualify for the knockout stages of the African Champions League. Thankfully though, Assam scored a hat-trick to send us through in second position in Group C after Zamalek topped the group thanks to their 2-0 win. But we were drawn in the quarterfinals against 5-time African Champions League winners ES Tunis, the best club in Tunisia. In the meantime, we dropped 2 more points in the league, and Zamalek are just too strong with their game in hand. They could go 10 points clear from us. The home fixture of the quarterfinals of the Champions League, we managed to scrape a 2-1 lead before heading out to Tunisia for the second leg. And the second leg couldn't have started any better as we give ourselves a 2-goal advantage in 7 minutes. However, ES Tunis weren't giving up and they scored 2 goals either side of half time, and both of them were just unstoppable strikes. But somehow we dug in, and before extra time loomed for our tired legs, Mohamed Assam scored yet another crucial goal, sending us through to the semi-final. And that sees us go through to face the current Tunisian league leaders CS Sfax, who stand in our way of an African Champions League final. And we really need to make this count because we are dropping more points in the Premier League, including a draw to Zamalek, who are now too far out of our reach to strike for the league title. We will be playing in the Egyptian Cup final, however, as we win in the semi-final and go on to face Pyramids. The first leg of the African Champions League semi-final, however, ended with a 3-3 draw in Tunisia, and that was only thanks to a very late equaliser from our opponents in the 95th minute, but the result still gave us confidence. It was a draw in the other semi-final too, in the clash between Zamalek and Kaizer Chiefs of South Africa. The second leg of the semi-final of the Champions League was very much a back-and-forth encounter, with both teams going all out to try and put themselves in the final through attacking football, with the score being 2-2 at half-time. But the second half was a completely different story as we finally took control of the fixture, scoring 2 more goals and winning 7-5 on aggregate, giving us an African Champions League final showdown against Zamalek, who's going for back-to-back wins, and who also have just been crowned champions of Egypt once again. Weirdly, unlike other Champions Leagues, this final has 2 legs and they come either side of the Egyptian Cup final we have to play. But let's not get distracted. This is our chance to lift the first Champions League of our Pentagon Challenge in our first attempt. And it couldn't have started any better when we were awarded a penalty and El Tayyib slotted it away perfectly. But Zamalek soon converted a set piece of their own, but with a break down the left-hand side and a well-placed cross, Hassan was at the back post for us to net home a second goal, taking a 2-1 lead into the second leg. 3 days later in the same stadium for the Egyptian Cup final, Issam scored a very late winner for us to win 3-2, keeping the strong form alive. But it's second leg time in the African Champions League final. Zamalek are very much capable of coming to the game today and completely destroying us and crushing our dreams. But we need to stay strong and hopefully come away with the first step of 5 in our Pentagon Challenge journey. And the nerves were settled almost immediately, it seemed, as once again we found a super early goal after just 2 minutes. But after half-time, Zamalek came out flying, and Samson Akinyula, the star man, was lethal. And thanks to a huge defensive mistake again, we gifted Zamalek and Samson an equaliser. Until the 78th minute, where Sam's run down the wing was fantastic, and he put in a pinpoint cross to be tapped in by El Tayyib, who couldn't simply miss. And we are crowned African Champions League winners. And while this is the pinnacle for this second-tier Egyptian club, I am on just step 1 of 5 in my pursuit to become the greatest manager of all time in this Pentagon Challenge. We are on a quest to complete the Pentagon Challenge, which we will only complete by winning all 5 Champions Leagues across the world. And so far, we have just taken the Egyptian second-tier side all the way to the final of the African Champions League, somehow going on to win the trophy in our first attempt. Which means it's probably time to say goodbye to Africa and resign. But this club has given us so much, including our first job and unemployment, plus the coaching badges to go from no qualifications to a Continental A license holder with a 3.5-star reputation too. Not to mention the effect it's had on our manager attributes. That's some insane growth. Because remember when we started unemployed, we were a complete bum. But now that we've won the African Champions League, there's no need for us to stay. It's going to be sad to leave these boys behind, but as we say, we've got no reason to stay. It is time to unfortunately resign from my post as Asiat Petroleum Manager and see what happens next. There are some very interesting jobs straight off the bat, including the Thai champions Buriram United, who are currently sat in second place exactly halfway through the season. They match my reputation right now, however, despite winning the Thai League 12 times, they have never won an Asian Champions League. In Japan, there are 2 clubs in the top flight, including Kyoto Sanga and FC Tokyo, who are actually bottom and 15th position, again midway through the season. However, the last few years, the Asian Champions League has been dominated by Saudi Arabian clubs who have won and taken runners-up positions. That was until this season, however, as Urawa Red Diamonds and Cerezo Osaka, both from Japan, are currently in a 2-legged battle in the final, with the Red Diamonds currently 5-0 up after the first leg. So could the pendulum be shifting, and could we potentially see a rise in Japanese football? May that be a very good way to go, and hopefully the downfall of the Saudi Arabian clubs. The other option, however, would take us to Mexico for the North American CONCACAF Champions League with Pachuca, who are currently sat in a title race in Liga MX. Their reputation is slightly higher than our managerial one, and clubs don't tend to really hire managers with lower reputation, but it's still worth, I think, applying for the job just to see whether we could cheekily manage to find ourselves in Mexico. However, I don't think we can be really picky at this point. We've only had one club, and it was very difficult to even find a club as good as what we managed to do. I think we actually just play it smart, and we just apply for all 4 of these clubs. Because what's the harm in doing so? They're not going to be too bothered that we've applied for each of these roles, and any of these clubs will definitely be a step up. I know that going to Buriram United is a bit of a risk because Thai football doesn't really tend to be at the precipice of the Asian Champions League, but they do still have a very good setup. And if we do manage to get that job and we don't manage to get the others, they've kind of been like Thai champs for a while. They've been like the winners of the last 3 years. It seems like there's only really one contender as well. It could be a really easy way to like gain reputation, gain qualifications, and potentially even cause another upset. And now I guess we just gotta sit and wait to see what happens, as well as keep an eye on to see if anything else comes up. Interestingly, I think we've just come to the end of one part of the MLS anyway, maybe like the earlier part, and 3 clubs have actually sacked their manager, including the New York Red Bulls, which is an interesting one to begin with. But Colorado Rapids, not to say that I'm going to apply for them, but is a very intriguing club because I have done the Pentagon Challenge before I became a YouTuber. This was back in FM15 a long time ago, and Colorado Rapids was the team that I actually took to the North American Champions League. Not going to do that today, but I felt like it was just something I needed to share with you guys. Days were passing by with no news, but more options came in as Kashima Antlers in the J1 League in Japan popped up, which I also applied for, remembering that they have in fact won an Asian Champions League in 2018. But the first to invite us to an interview was the Mexican side Pachuca, followed by Buriram United, so at least there is a chance we won't be waiting much longer. Next came an interview with FC Tokyo just the day after, who interestingly was the first to approach me for an offer for the job, with a whopping transfer budget too, but I was curious about the other roles, so I asked them to delay 1 week. But it was just a day later, and both Pachuca and Buriram are also offering me the role as their manager. In that time, Buriram dropped to 5 points behind the top of the league in Thailand. That, alongside the fact that Thai football isn't as strong as Japanese football right now, was enough to turn that one down. I asked to delay the Pachuca job and dove deeper into the Kyoto Sanga FC club before their interview. Their key player is Robert, who you might remember from being a youth player at Real Betis, and is an exceptional winger. They eventually offered me the job too, and I just felt like this was the correct move for me as I take my new role at Kyoto Sanga. Now, I've put together one of my favourite type of tactics on Football Manager. It's a 4-2-3-1, but with a centre midfielder on attack, so it kind of looks like a 4-1-4-1. But it allows Robert to have a lot of gaps. And I actually really like this team, by the way. We've got Masuda up top. He's 19 years of age. He is really good. Like, great pace, decent decision-making, off-the-ball finishing ability and technique, both above 15. And he's 19 with still, by the looks of it, a little bit more potential. We just need to make sure nobody activates that release clause before we manage to get him on a new contract. There's also another good youngster who isn't in the first team right now, but it's Matsumoto, again 19, is a left winger. I think I want to start this guy more than I actually want to start my actual left winger, who's a 30-year-old. It's kind of average, like good pace, good agility, but Matsumoto looks better to me. Brooks in the centre mid is a decent South African centre midfielder who will help us going forward. The reason why I've got him on centre midfield on attack is although he has really low finishing ability, he's got 15 composure. So with that gets forward whenever possible, natural fitness and stamina, he's going to be bombing in the box quite often, find himself with a lot of opportunities with good composure. He can still finish the shot off. I actually really like this setup, and I think 16th, we should be barreling up. They want us to finish mid-table by the end of the season. I think we're very much capable of that. We're on 16 points. We're never going to get relegated with this team. I think we should be looking in on top half for sure. With this being mid-season in Japan, we are already being chucked into important league fixtures, including beating the Asian Champions League winners Urawa Red Diamonds in their own backyard. which is hopefully something we can accomplish maybe soon with Kyoto Sanga, because we are making moves in the transfer window, already agreeing a deal to sign Suzuki from Vissel Kobe at the end of the season, as well as the Chelsea, who we signed to play right now for us in that attacking midfield slot. Finally, this 18-year-old Japanese star Danto Zama, who looked fantastic, also joins us for £2.7 million, but he's a right winger. And I signed him because Al Sadd matched Robert's release clause and he was unwilling to sign a new contract with us. Which is a shame because we really picked up some steam lately and went on a nice unbeaten run. And that was thanks to the form of Masuda, our wonder kid striker we have, who sometimes would just simply win games off his own back. With Robert's money, I couldn't help myself though and signed a fantastic 18-year-old Japanese goalkeeper who instantly becomes my number one. So let's carry on through this season to see where we take our new club. Well, it's the end of the season and we've got to be happy with an 11th place finish, considering we were down in 15th position when we took over, and since then we've lost our best player. And now I feel like it's all about recruitment. We got one striker coming in, but I think the most important thing is keeping the best guys that we've got. We can't afford to lose Masuda and we can't afford to lose Danto Zama. They're just way too good and they're Japanese, which means they're kind of more valuable to us than anybody else who's not in Japan. To kick things off, I decided to bring in two centre-backs, with the first being a young Japanese left-footed option called Shibuya for £1.8 million. I was also happy to sell Kawasaki to Al Shabab for £1 million, knowing I had better options coming in for free. The other centre-back I signed was a foreign centre-back because neither of the two I have right now are very good, and with limited foreign slots, this guy is definitely worth it. Big news though, I have completed my Continental Pro license and I'm now fully qualified. Bids came in for Tatsuya Ito, which I was happy to accept with a player in mind to spend the money on. That player being the Japanese defensive midfielder Sora Inoue. My final signing was a winger from South Africa that I brought in for 450k. And we have switched to a new 4-2-2-2 formation with a false 9 that Suzuki is perfect for. So let's see how it does in our 7th season trying to complete the Pentagon Challenge. Things started a bit ropey to begin with this season and we were very inconsistent for a while. But players like Danto Zama from the right hand side and Yuito Suzuki in that false 9 position finally got used to the new system. And we only lost one more match all the way up until the July break in fixtures, and we now sit in 3rd place in the league table. Funny enough, a position ahead of FC Tokyo, who we almost took the manager's job of. We also reached the semi-final of the J-League Cup and find ourselves against an opposition from the division below, picking up a 3-1 win in the first leg. Still going on to win the second leg anyway to put us into the cup final. And the team we face in that final we just beat away from home with a 95th minute winner. Our unbelievable run has also put us to the top of the league. However, Vissel Kobe do have a game in hand over us with just a few games remaining in this unexpected title race. But it's cup final time in Japan and a chance at some silverware. However, things started really badly and we conceded direct from kickoff, but that didn't faze us, and within 7 minutes our South African left winger equalises. It wasn't until the second half when the next goal came, and it was a clanger from their goalkeeper. And that gave us the confidence to push for more, and 7 minutes later we found ourselves 3-1 up. Finally, in the 85th minute, we counter-attack a bad defensive pass and fire home to make it 4-1. And it's a great first step and good for our winning mentality that we've won this cup. And with a potential double on the cards, we are crowned the J-League Cup winners, lifting our first trophy, hopefully of many, in Asia. Back to the league, however, and we're waiting for Vissel Kobe to catch up in fixtures to see whether we win the league. We managed to win the next 2 with just a game to go while they began to catch up. But they first lost at home 3-0 to 13th position, followed by losing to 16th place Shannon Belmare 5-1. Giving us the most underwhelming league title win of all time as we are crowned champions with a game left to go. And considering how bad the season started as we actually crept down into the relegation zone at some point, this domestic double kind of come out of nowhere. The players that we had brought in the last season really complemented the youngsters that we already had, especially Masuda, who got 32 goals this season. It's going to be ever increasingly difficult to manage to keep hold of him with all of those clubs coming after him this pre-season. But we definitely need to keep our best players if we wish to win the Asian Champions League to our Pentagon Trophy cabinet. Speaking of the Asian Champions League, unfortunately it kind of runs halfway through our season. As we can see, we just finished the J-League where we have just won and lifted the title, and yet They are only at the group stage with a game left, with Vissel Kobe looks like they have just qualified already. So to be able to be in this competition, we're going to have to wait another whole year before the games start really happening. Speaking of the games happening, last season's winners, Shabab Al Ali, here they are, they're from the UAE, and they have currently Joe Bellingham playing for them in midfield. My scouts keep finding me fantastic strikers like these two here, who are both Japanese and 19 and 20 years old. Karu Doi, playing at FC Tokyo, even scored 20 goals in the J1 League last season, and I have to put a bid in just in case we lose one of our strikers this pre-season. A couple of our players, including our star striker, are unhappy with the lack of squad depth at centre-back. However, we have an up-and-coming talent in the youth academy that we can promote for now until we make enough money. Because right now we barely have enough money in the bank to cover the costs of the striker that I just put a bid in for. Just couldn't resist getting him though. Our reputation has increased thanks to our victories in Japan, up to a 3.5 star now. Not to mention our attributes are actually really rather respectful too. So I do think it's time we actually upgrade our look, to be honest. We've gone from basically looking like a scrub Sunday League manager. We need to change that, and I think going to a polo top is definitely the way to go. And I definitely actually think we need to make that a nice little navy color. I quite like the orange stripes though, but the trousers or the jeans don't go. They need to be black just like that. And we're already starting to look a little bit smarter on the sidelines. We are also looking rather presentable to welcome new signings as Karu Doi joins the club. That was our final signing and our best 11 season sit on the bench for now, but we are ready for the next season. Which, by the way, started very well as we smashed our first game 8-0 away from home. So let's see if we can retain the league title and attempt to win the Asian Champions League. Well, this season, the Asian Champions League was once again won by a Saudi Arabian club in Al Ali. And at the halfway mark, we were doing everything we could to make sure we were playing in it again next year too, as we sit top of the J1 League. The Champions League group stage was finally drawn for September as the first fixtures, as we were in Group D, alongside the current defenders Al Ali of Saudi Arabia, Esteghlal from Iran, and Shanghai Port of China. And we had the hardest test right away against the current champions Al Ali at home, and we had injuries to our goalkeeper Danto Zama, and Inouye was on international duty for Japan. This was an Al Ali side that had Ruben Diaz at the back, partnered with Christian Romero, and on the wings had the Brazilian Galeno. So it's very easy to see why they are the current champions of Asia. And despite all of this, we put up a really tough battle and actually took the lead. Although Al Ali did come back and equalise, leaving the game to finish 1-1. It was a lot easier against the Iranian side Esteghlal as we win 5-1. But the next match was the away game to Al Ali, and they defeated us 3-2. And they now jump to the top of the group by 6 points as we sit in second place. In the fourth match, we defeated Esteghlal in the home leg, meaning our last 2 games was against Shanghai, who we absolutely battered 7-3 when they came to Kyoto. The final game, however, comes after all of the rest of our league fixtures, but thankfully it doesn't matter too much as we've already qualified quite comfortably. In the league, we have a very tight title race where we have the advantage thanks to a game in hand. Where in the domestic cups, we've been knocked out of the J-League Cup already, but are in the final of the Emperor's Cup against Albirex Niigata. We continued our fantastic run and won the J1 League yet again as champions by 3 points ahead of this time round Yokohama Marinos, which is a surprise second package. Vissel Kobe actually dropped all the way down to 5th place. We ended up also winning the final game of our AFC Champions League group stage fixture 7-0 against Shanghai Port. But at the start of the new year, we have that Emperor's Cup final before we play the next round of the AFC Champions League, a competition we have yet to win yet. And so it's another opportunity for us to win silverware and keep our players happy and wanting to stay for the Asian Champions League. The game was 2-2 in extra time when an attack was played down the right hand side and Danto Zama baited the defender into taking him down, and the ref awarded a penalty kick. With the resulting VAR check confirming the decision, the penalty was given, and it was Danto Zama who stepped up to take it and smashed it in. And that was the Emperor's Cup 1 for Kyoto Sanga, and this is just forever growing our reputation for years later when we search for new clubs. But next It's the Asian Champions League knockouts. The board have set us with an initial budget of £6 million, however we have no wage, so it's more on the lines of £3 million, and we are rejecting bids left, right and centre. The draw for the Asian Champions League has been made and we have Western United FC in the knockouts from Australia. With our transfer budget, we bring in 2 CDMs, with the first being brought from rivals Vissel Kobe and the next is a player I remembered seeing when Buriram United was offering me a job. The first leg in Australia against Western United ended in a draw. The second leg was much more comfortable as we win the game 4-1. The quarterfinal draw puts us against Shabab Al Ali, who remember won this competition very recently, just 2 seasons ago. And we caught them out from a cheeky set piece to take the lead in the first leg. However, remember who Shabab Al Ali have? Jobe Bellingham, who found the final goal of the game, 1-1. He couldn't prevent us from taking the win in the second leg, however, and we are through to the semi-finals. Only to face the Saudi Arabian side Al Tawoun, who have some very good players in their squad and managed by Xavi. But hey, what does Xavi have that we don't have right now? Far as I'm concerned, it's a level playing field. However, Xavi's side caught us off guard when they took the lead through Dennis Mann. I mentioned there being a level playing field, although I forgot that Xavi doesn't have Suzuki like we do, because this guy is different class and a clinical finisher, and in the first leg of the semi-final, he puts away a hat-trick. And a 1-0 defeat is still good enough to see us make the Asian Champions League final in the second leg, potentially one step closer of winning another one of the 5 in our quest of completing the Pentagon Challenge. But we've got our work cut out against an opponent that we've failed to beat in the group stage in Al Ali. In the first leg, we were also without Suzuki, who's recovering from an injury. However, the genius of Karu Doi in the first half helped us take the lead from an incredible solo goal. We held on to the lead until the 57th minute when Galeno pulled it back for Al Ali. And the Brazilian was a constant threat, and his solo run down our right eventually led to the Saudi side going 2-1 up. But we fought right to the final whistle, and in the 94th minute, we snatched a late equaliser through the substitute, Hinokio, on to the second leg in Saudi Arabia. We thankfully have Suzuki back for this match, and I think we have really missed him in the first leg. Also, away goals don't count in this, so we can relax there and just focus on the result today. However, if the result is a draw at the final whistle, it goes straight to penalties, and either way, the nerves are kicking in. It was a really positive start for us as we broke down the right-hand side with a cracking run, and a ball played right into the centre ricocheted into the net for an own goal off Romero. However, it only took Al Ali 5 minutes before they woke up, and a fantastic strike from outside the box flew into the bottom corner. 1-1 at half-time as the second half begins. It was a quiet second half, but once again, the right-back Oda provided an insane cross and Doi was there free for the tap-in to make it 2-1. And it seemed that Al Ali had nothing left to give. And time ran out, and Kyoto Sanya are Asian Champions League winners. We went into this final as underdogs after failing to beat them in the 2 games that we played against them in the group stage, but we came to Saudi Arabia in the final with a point to prove, and that's another Champions League to add to our cabinet. With 2 out of 5 down, it's probably time to start hunting for the next one. So I took charge of the next game a few days later, a home game to say goodbye to the fans, and then I resigned from my role on the hunt for the next. Because we still aren't even halfway through the Pentagon Challenge yet. It's time to play the waiting game in the Pentagon Challenge, because after lifting the Asian Champions League with Kyoto Sanya, we have now won 2 out of the 5 Champions Leagues to complete the Pentagon Challenge. But there's only 2 jobs available in both North and South America, and both are in Mexico and don't look very appealing. So now we just sit back and wait for the new jobs to pop up. And 1 month later, a very interesting job came up. As in Brazil, Fluminense has just sacked their manager, and Neymar is currently in charge as caretaker boss, while the club sits in the relegation zone. But actually, they've only played 12 games compared to the 16 and 17 with teams around them, and the prediction sees them in mid-table. So to me, this is an easy decision. I have to apply for this job. But straight after, Atletico Paranaense also sacked their manager, and they currently have Esteval playing playing for them. And it was them who came to us first to invite us for an interview. But the jobs kept coming in as Santos sacked their manager, and again I have to apply. They are currently only mid-table as well. But it's interview time at Fluminense now. Interestingly though, Santos fans consider me the leading candidate before I've even interviewed. But finally that interview came, and I feel like this is currently the job I want the most out of the three. And after delaying offers from both of the other clubs, Santos finally come back with an offer themselves, and I am happy to accept taking the role as the new manager at Santos FC. There were definitely some recognisable faces in this Santos side, as well as a couple of hugely talented new gens. A bit of history for Santos FC: they've won the Copa Libertadores, the one that we're trying to win, 4 times in their history, including just 2 seasons previous. But it seems like a lot of that side was pulled apart soon after by the European clubs. In terms of the Santos side that I've adopted, I'm going to try and go for this kind of Christmas tree formation with a shadow striker and a trequartista, a halfback, because they have a very good player who I think is perfect for the halfback role. This guy's really good. He's only 20 years of age with a lot of potential, so putting him into that lineup as that halfback I think will be great for his development. I think in terms of what I need, we've got a very good left-sided centre-back here in Hernandez, who has pace to burn with 17 acceleration. So he's fine. We might need a right-sided centre-back, but that's not the end of it. I think we kind of need to look at these 2 positions here. We haven't really got an out-and-out shadow striker. We've got a player that can play there in Bombardier, who... yeah, he's okay. He's 30 years old. He's got that good finishing ability, but he doesn't play there naturally. So unless I can train him there. But there is some money to burn, so yeah, I guess I need to just go on the hunt a little bit. We started by loaning a player from Lazio, who's a 20-year-old Brazilian who could be a great player for us in those attacking positions. Unfortunately, he didn't have much effect in the first game though, as we lose to Atlético Mineiro 2-1. Our next game is in the Copa Sudamericana against Uruguayan side Nacional in the knockout stages. And remember, this is kind of like the Europa League of South America. We are needing to win the Copa Libertadores instead. But anyway, we smashed our way through to the next round. The following fixture is the real tester, as we have first place Vasco da Gama away from home. But they absolutely embarrass us 4-0. I need more firepower, and Victor Hugo can give us that. A fantastic attacking midfielder from Houston Dynamo for 5.8 million. Slotting alongside Rodrigo in what I think could be a deadly partnership. So let's see how we get on with the rest of this season, as well as in the Copa Sudamericana. Well, it seems we battered the Ecuadorian side Barcelona in the quarterfinals, then defeated Fluminense narrowly. Ironically, now facing the other Brazilian side we turned down to be at Santos in the final. But the final didn't start off as well as we liked, and within 5 minutes Atletico caught us napping and took an early lead. Luckily, Rodrigo Muniz pulled us level from the penalty spot, and a ball played out wide 25 minutes into first half resulted in an unbelievable cross tapped in at the back post. And we lift the Copa Sudamericana for Santos. In the league though, after that loss from Vasco da Gama, we went on a great run and only lost 1 more remaining game and picked up 3 points majority of the time, ending the season in 6th place. However, I don't think I'm going to stay at Santos. I'll tell you why. Because on the job center, I noticed that the Flamengo job had popped up, and although they finished in 12th place last season, they have a much better transfer budget, phenomenal squad, and alright, some are aging, but there's some youngsters coming through as well. And diving into the squad some more, I actually think my system here at Santos would be better suited for this Flamengo side. They have the players I desire to play the system. So I made the decision to apply for the job and possibly make a switch in Brazil. But the Santos board made it clear that they wanted me to stay, whereas the Flamengo fans laughed off our interest. May I remind them that I just won a major trophy in 6 months of being in South America, and a whole month later they are finally inviting us into an interview. But unfortunately, maybe for me and not for Santos, Flamengo turned me down and instead went with someone else managing and currently in Argentina. But as much as I really wanted that job, I now need to just focus at the club I'm at. So I begin to sign new players such as Shabalala, a left back from South Africa, for just 500k, as well as bringing Sandri back to the club he grew up in, followed by Julian Dominguez, an Argentinian defensive midfielder with a lot of talent, another left back but a more attacking option named Ryan. Before more signings came through though, we had the group stage of the Copa Libertadores, and first to join us in Group E is Peñarol of Uruguay. Next is Universidad de Chile of, you guessed it, Chile, And finally joining our group is Olimpia, the Paraguayan side, and that's a rather difficult group full of the biggest clubs across South America. In the youth academy, I promoted a Polish centre-back we had to the first team and actually intend on giving him some starting minutes at centre-back. But arguably the best bit of business was the future signing of Nicolas Dominguez from Nottingham Forest, who will be 34 when he joins us, but still a cracking player. Meanwhile, we are currently ripping through the Sao Paulo State Championship league table, winning all 12 games and topping the league table and going into the quarterfinals as favourites. No rest though, as it's Copa Libertadores time, and we travel to Chile taking all 3 points, followed by a 5-0 win against Olimpia at home, topped off with some fantastic goals. Worryingly, we draw to the Uruguayan side Peñarol after they equalise in the 92nd minute. Before the away leg, we've got the final of the state championship after overcoming Sao Paulo in the semi-final to face Palmeiras in the final across 2 legs. But after the first leg, our chances aren't looking great. And despite us taking a very early lead through Victor Hugo, we unfortunately couldn't capitalise and only mustered a 1-1 draw and lost on aggregate. It was thankfully a much better outcome in the away trip to Uruguay, as we came away with a fantastic performance and a 2-0 victory. And after 4 games, we're favourites to qualify, which is confirmed in the match against the Chilean opponents in the 5th round of the fixtures in a 3-0 win. We also kicked off the main Brazilian league, in which we picked up a solid result in the first game. So with the Copa Libertadores on a break until mid-July, I crack on with the Brazilian league fixtures. Sadly, in July, we lost our goalkeeper when Monterrey activated his release clause. We also received a bid for our halfback, Lumar, from Norwich, but we've offered him a contract to stay at the club. And thankfully, he decided to do so.
Nice.
Although we also lost Charles, our starting left back, but I've already brought in 2 replacements at the start of the season. As we approach the knockouts of the Copa Libertadores, we have been on a good run of form, not losing for a while, and that sees us sat in 2nd place. And that's in spite of us having horrendous injury problems at the minute with no striker. But in the Copa Libertadores, we played Club Almagro from Argentina and waltzed through the first leg with a 4-0 lead. The second leg was much closer of a game, but we still won and progressed. And we went straight into the quarterfinals against Brazilian champions Vasco da Gama, and after falling behind, we pulled it level to travel home with a second leg 1 apiece. And that is where our run come to an end, as Vasco da Gama defeat us 1-0, which is disappointing in terms of the Pentagon challenge after being knocked out this season. But it means we can focus on the league this season, and we are still in the title race with the current holders of the Copa Libertadores, Internacional. And they defeated us in the game after the Vasco defeat 2-1 to take an advantage. But the final third of the season, we were deadly and gave up very little points. And while Vasco da Gama went on to lift the Copa Libertadores, we go on to lift the Brazilian title just ahead of Corinthians, as International dropped off the pace. But as great as this team has been, there are some weaknesses, and the board have been very generous in backing us with a huge transfer budget. While I was pondering what transfers to make, I also realised I was rather underdressed for this stage of my career. Because as much as I want to go for the tracksuit manager look, we are past that now, and I think I need a really nice shirt while I'm here in Brazil. A white shirt with black trousers, a classy manager. I also been fancying a new style of facial hair, and it's time for the mustache, I think. Anyway, it's back to the transfers, and I've got to take into consideration players I'm promoting to the first team, such as Paulo Cesar, who is more than ready. Another player that might persuade me to sell someone else is Diego, who is a fantastic 20-year-old defensive midfielder. And my squad is looking incredibly saturated right now, and I need a bit of a clear out. One signing I knew I wanted to make, however, was bringing Kaiki back to Santos after leaving a long time ago in 2022. The other being a Brazilian right back called João Carlos, who is a bit of a squad player too, but to be fair, with our tactic we need really good attacking fullbacks. The Copa Libertadores groups have been drawn, and we have a much easier group this season. So let's see how we do this year as reigning champions of Brazil. Well, we smashed through our group, winning 5 games out of the 6 and comfortably progressing through to the knockouts. We also played in the FIFA Club World Cup and finished 2nd in our group, which included 2 draws against Porto and Real Madrid. The quarterfinals was as far as we could get though, as unfortunately we lost to AC Milan. However, that was only on penalties though. It has meant that we've been a bit preoccupied and only played 12 league games, but we still find ourselves in 4th place before the knockouts of the Copa Libertadores. And we've been drawn against the Argentinian side, Independiente, who smashed us in the first leg 3-1. We started the second leg really well, and Paulo Cesar scored within 5 minutes to make it 3-2 on aggregate, but our opponents caught us on the counter-attack, and before we knew it, we were 2 goals down again. It stayed that way until the second half when Paulo Cesar produced the goods for us, making it 4-3. But yet again, Independiente caught us sleeping and a ball over the top led to a 5-3 aggregate. We kept fighting to the very end and Rodrigo Muñoz pulled back one more, but the tie ended up 5-4 on aggregate and once again we were knocked out. Another season without a Copa Libertadores to add to our trophy cabinet and still no closer to completing the Pentagon challenge. So for the rest of our season, our focus turns to the league and we've got many games to catch up with. And without other competitions in the way, there was no stopping us and we stomped through our fixtures. With one game remaining, we were 1 point clear of Corinthians going into the final day for the title with only Gremio to beat, who currently find themselves in 15th place. We got off to the worst start too when Gremio won a penalty after just 8 minutes, but Ivanildo made a huge save. And that's exactly what we needed to kick us into gear, and by half time we go in leading 1-0. Coming out just as strong in the second half, shutting Gremio attacks down and scoring a second to secure the win, which of course makes us the champions of Brazil once again. And I just need the lads to start taking the Copa Libertadores a little bit more seriously. This season left me with the question of what do I need to improve this side? And we only have £13 million in the transfer budget to spend. Job-wise, there's only really the Vasco da Gama role in South America, but we've dethroned them already and they fell off the pace. Attacking-wise, we've nearly had 100 goals between our main front three, so it's not like we aren't scoring enough. Worryingly, the club wants to build a new stadium though, which could mean some heavy debts. And our finances is already looking the worst they've ever been and added on to the debts the club already has. So I tried to sell one of the defensive midfielders, accepting a bid for 9.25 million. But he rejected all 3 clubs and opted to stay. Annoyingly, however, I had already bought in his replacement, a young Uruguayan midfielder for a fraction of the cost, as well as a new goalkeeper for £6.4 million from Ecuador. But I did eventually sell Pinto for slightly less money to make it back up. My final signing was actually a striker who might see some game time now that Muniz is starting to get a little old. Our group has been drawn for the Copa Libertadores this season, and it's Boca Juniors, Oriente and Fluminense who join us in Group E. So once again, let's see how we do in the Copa Libertadores group stages. Well, we comfortably finished top, drawing both games to Boca Juniors but winning the other 4 fixtures, with the next round putting us up against Sporting Cristal of Peru. In the league, our performances hasn't been perfect, picking up 3 losses and 4 draws, dropping down to 4th place. First leg of the Copa Libertadores though was a close one as we went to Peru and got a 3-2 win. The second leg was not exactly close at all. The scorer William, by the way, was a youngster that I promoted mid-season and he's really hit the ground running. In the next round is Argentinian side Atletico Tucumán, and we gave ourselves a strong lead in the first leg, winning 4-1. We actually lost the second leg in Argentina, but we still progressed through 6-4 winners on aggregate, leaving us in the semi-finals against Internacional, who currently lead the Brazilian league. Not only that, but we actually have to play against them across 2 legs again the month before in the Brazilian Cup final, which we also made. And we unfortunately failed to win as Internacional was just too strong for us, and they go on to lift the Brazilian Cup, while it also looks like they're going to win the Brazilian league as they're 10 points clear of us now. However, in the Copa Libertadores first leg, it went a lot better for Santos fans because in front of our home crowd, we scored 2 goals in a victory topped off with an epic second goal. And we put ourselves into the Copa Libertadores final with an amazing 2-2 away draw in the second leg. And in the final, we go on to face Atlético Nacional from Colombia, who have won the Copa Libertadores themselves twice in their history. However, in the Brazilian league, Internacional just needed a result in their next match to be crowned Brazilian champions. And their next match was against us, which they did in our own backyard after a 1-1 draw. But our focus is kind of elsewhere, as it's the Copa Libertadores final and it's just 1 match, not 2-legged ties, to lift the trophy. And of course, to get our hands on the 3rd out of 5 trophies towards the Pentagon challenge. We could have asked to be in a better position at the start either, as in 22 seconds Michael da Silva was tapping the ball in to open the scoring. He even doubled it after 18 minutes and we were flying. João Carlos picked up a 3rd before half time, and around the hour mark, left back Shabalala smashed in a 4th, and in the most one-sided final yet, we scored a 5th to win emphatically, bringing glory back to this once incredible club with a lot of history, lifting the Copa Libertadores trophy, which also helps us, because that is trophy number 3 of 5 in our quest to complete the Pentagon challenge. After lifting the Copa Libertadores, that is 3 out of the 5 trophies we need to complete the the Pentagon Challenge. With the two remaining, we need being the UEFA Champions League and the CONCACAF Champions League. But I have very much enjoyed my time at Santos, and considering where they were when we took over, we did really well to turn things around for them and win multiple league titles and plenty of other trophies even before lifting the big one that we came here to do. And I am sad to be leaving these players behind, but who knows, we may see some of them pop up later in our journey, and maybe even the system that we perfected too, as we resign from my role as Santos manager. And almost immediately there's a club in the job centre that is needing a manager that I am very much interested in. Because if we're going to the CONCACAF competition next, then I'm looking for a job in Mexico, and Club America is one of the ones that I was really hoping would pop up. Not to mention they have some of the finest kits in Mexico, and they have a player up front. This guy's insane. 25-year-old Mexican striker. He is phenomenal. Just lacks a little bit of pace, but that will do. That will do. So I think straight away I have to apply for this job. History-wise, they have won the trophy we are targeting twice in back-to-back years in the 2010s. And the CONCACAF trophy recently has been dominated by Mexican clubs since Orlando won it nearly 7 seasons before. After a week, I had 2 offers for an interview, including Liverpool, which I did not apply for. An interesting proposition for next time maybe, but not yet. Club America is where I want to go first. However, Matt Richardson of the ITV Sport can't believe I turned down the Liverpool job. Typical English press. Right now though, the offer I desired has come through, and Club America want me to be their new manager, and I am buzzing to get started in a league I know very little about. All I really do know is that the league is kind of split into 2 across a season, but they have 2 champions. I think that's right. But anyway, all I need to focus on, to be honest, is qualifying for the CONCACAF Champions League every single season. So I just know I need to be near the top. If I win the league, brilliant. If I win the league the second time, brilliant. If I win the league both times, fantastic. I just need to qualify. The transfer window was open, and I already started building my team, bringing in a new striker for just £2.5 million. We also desperately needed a new left back, and I signed a cheap one from Tigres. I'm also going to promote a youth academy prospect who's 18 but could really help us out in a lot of attacking midfielder positions, and we need Mexican players in the starting 11. And that centre attacking midfield role is a position that we are using, and we have slightly altered our system from Santos into a 2-striker formation. Because we also had the likes of Seiko Mara as a striker who sat on the bench who could be great for us. We also signed a Danish left back who will be a good starting attacking fullback from us from Midtjylland. And it's been a good start to the season, but not a great start. As in the first 5 games of the second half of the season, we win 3, losing 1, and sit in 3rd position. So let's crack on with the closing tournament, the second half of the Mexican League, and try to qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League. Well, after the 17 fixtures, we finished top of the league. However, it's not over yet. Because from this, the competition goes into a playoff system to win the league, and we enter into the quarterfinals, and as you can see, we are 2-0 up after the first leg. And we win the second leg 2-0 as well to go into the semi-finals against Monterrey. However, they pull off a huge win, and we go into the second leg of the semi-final 2 goals down after losing 4-2. Don't write us off yet, however, because after an early goal, we are on top of the match and equalise really soon after. And from then on, Monterrey could not handle us. And not only did we take the lead, we carried on scoring goals, and it ended up being incredibly embarrassing for Monterrey by the final whistle, as we stuffed them 5-0 coming from behind to win 7-4 on aggregate. And in the 2-legged final, we faced Cotera FC, and in the away leg, it's our captain Anderson Duarte who shone, as he scores 2 goals to give us a huge advantage, leaving us massively favourites to lift the closing tournament trophy of the Liga MX. But we started the second leg giving away a penalty within just 2 minutes. However, he stepped up and our keeper makes a huge save. From then on, it was always going to be our game to lose, and we were way too strong for our opponents, smashing them in the final, winning 6-1 on aggregate. And we lift the Liga MX closing tournament trophy and become champions of Mexico within 6 months of joining the club. And most importantly, we qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League next season, which by the way, was just won by Inter Miami in an All-American final. So we need to make sure that Mexico at least have a team that lift it next year. The board have given me £6 million with my main aim to try and get more Mexicans in my starting 11. This is because of the registration rules where you have to have 4 Mexican-born players in your starting 11. So I begin by signing the best Mexican keeper I could find within our budget from Cruz Azul that cost me just £2.8 million and is just 25 years old, as well as bringing in a Mexican defender from Pachuca for just £3.8 million. And they come into our lineup, making us a lot more defensively strong. So let's see how the opening stage of Liga MX gets on. Once again, it's top of the table after 17 fixtures as we go into the playoffs, with the quarterfinals lining us up to play Deportivo Guadalajara. And we battered them in the first leg 4-0 away from home. We lost the second leg 1-0, but we still progressed. And into the semi-finals, we played Pumas. And we once again proved that we were too strong even away from home, winning the game 3-1, battering them in the second leg 5-1 to go into the final. And yet another final, this time lined up against Tijuana. But again, we made this really easy for ourselves, as we won the first leg 4-1 to be crowned champions again. We had our youth intake in the winter break and brought through a generational talent up front. But with no budget, we just get on with the second half of the season. Although, it is time to get ourselves a tie to smarten up our look, and I actually think we match the Club America colours and go for a bright blue shirt and a yellow tie. It's the closing tournament time of the Liga MX. And would you look at that, we topped the group and this time it's unbeaten. However, we got all the way to the final again, only to lose on penalties to Atlas Guadalajara. But my mind was elsewhere because I'm a little bit confused on the CONCACAF Champions League. And that's because we don't seem to be in it this year. I feel like it runs once a year. And yeah, we weren't in it. And I don't know why. There was a first round knockout stage. We weren't in that. Even though we won the closing stage last season and obviously the opening stage this season. I don't know whether it goes a season after that, but I'm really confused on how I qualify or why I haven't qualified yet. But anyway, it's going ahead and Santos Laguna won it this year. Team I beat multiple times already this season. So I guess we gotta wait until next year to attempt to win the CONCACAF Champions League trophy. We next got to play in the Mexican Champions Trophy, where the winners of the two leagues play against each other. But on the day, Atlas Guadalajara had a fire striker and he scored a hat-trick in a 3-2 win on a day we were missing some key players. It was pretty much our entire starting 11 that plays international football. They were all absent. We keep plugging on through in the opening tournament once again, topping the group and getting all the way to the final, winning 5-4 in aggregate against Monterrey to be crowned champions. Two new signings joined us and both were defensive midfielders who could also contribute in defence, followed by a Mexican centre-back for £8 million. And on the eve of the closing tournament of the Liga MX, we finally have our first match announced in the CONCACAF Champions League against the current holders. And after the home leg finished 2-2, we head to the away leg. And with the game finishing 0-0 after 90 minutes, the match went to extra time and Santos Laguna scored right on half-time. Thankfully for us, we won a penalty though and converted to take the game to a penalty shootout. The first penalties for both teams were dispatched, but Santos Laguna's second penalty was actually smashed wide. Taking advantage of this, we continue to score to make it 3-2, and Santos threw the tie away by missing their fourth penalty, shooting wide yet again. And we went on to win the penalty shootout to progress to the quarterfinals. This put us against Guatemalan side Comunicaciones, and the first match was in Guatemala, defeating them pretty comfortably 6-1. And after the second leg, we go through to the semi-finals with an 11-2 aggregate win. The semi-finals, however, would see us clash with Club Necaxa, also from Mexico. We played the first leg of the semi-final at home, and our striker Ruiz put in an incredible performance, scoring the first goal. On the 20th minute, the scoreline was 2-0 when Carlos Aguilar doubled our lead. And with some beautiful football, Ruiz found his strike partner's run and Gallo smashed in to make it 3-0 before half-time. And we take that 3-0 lead into the second leg. The second leg began with our left back breaking the lines of defence to assist Gallo to make it 4, and Ruiz made it 5 from the spot, and Necaxa could only muster a consolation goal, sending us into the final of the CONCACAF Champions League. And there to face us is our Mexican opponents, Atlas Guadalajara again. And we wouldn't have to wait long either, as it was the next match that we had to play just days later. Once again, we took the lead from a penalty, but Atlas equalised in the second half, again from the spot. But Rafael Luiz dropped into space and played a beautiful pass to Rios this time round, and the outcome remained the same. goal. And we take the slight advantage of a goal into the second leg. And that second leg was a prime example of what a good footballing side we were, as Rios scored in the 9th minute. But look at this, just how amazing of a team goal our second was, as Ruiz put us 4-1 up on aggregate. And he was exceptional once again, scoring his second just before half-time and getting his hat-trick and the match ball in the final in the second half. Atlas managed to pull 2 goals back, but it didn't matter, because by then it was already curtains and our names was being scribed on the CONCACAF trophy. And at the first time of asking, we won the CONCACAF Champions League to claim our 4th out of 5 in the Pentagon Challenge. 4 down and it's the big one to go in Europe. However, right now there is no jobs around, so I'll continue here at Club America to finish this part of the season off, seeing as we are so close, or unless another big job appears. And after we defeated Tigres in the final match 3-0, we go into the playoffs in top spot once again. Hilariously though, we played against Atlas Guadalajara again and defeated them in the quarters to go on to play Monterrey in the semi-finals, and we progressed through to the final where we are met by Santos Laguna, and for the final time we are champions of Mexico. And yes, as I said, for the final time, because it is now time for us to resign from our role at Club America, a club that I've actually really enjoyed managing. Rafael Ruiz, what a player. Wherever I go, I will be looking to see if I can get him if nobody else comes in for him first. He's been wanting to leave for ages. There's clubs that have been after him ever since I joined, but that is definitely somebody that I might try and pick up, as well as Edson Rios as well, who's been incredible. But yes, it is time to go. It is time to resign. And right now, there has been a job that has popped up, Atletico Madrid. I'm not interested in that. It's not a club that I desire to manage. They finished 7th in La Liga, with Barcelona and Real Madrid finishing the top 2, of course. That's the 2 that I would want to be managing. But Pochettino is at Real Madrid. I don't know how long he's been there. Just over a year. So probably not really looking to move him on right now. And Luis Enrique is back at Barcelona. And he has been there for pretty much since the start that we've been doing the Pentagon Challenge. He's been there for nearly 13 years. So I very much doubt I'll be heading to Spain. But there are other leagues that we've got loaded, include the Premier League. There's some big clubs there that potentially might need a manager over the summer. But after my experience, I should be able to get a job anywhere with my 4.5-star reputation. Not to mention how much my attributes have progressed, although I'm a little salty at the adaptability still being only on 5. So now we sit and wait for the right role to pop up in Europe. And we were waiting a while until the Newcastle United job came up in late November with the sacking of Eric Dyer, who, by the way, is an incredible manager attribute-wise and even managed Borussia Dortmund before he went to Newcastle. But this is a Newcastle team that is still in the Champions League and doing very well in the league phase of the competition. But I don't know whether the negatives outweigh the positives. One of the other big positives is they have one of the best strikers in the game right now, and he's also top scorer of the Premier League. He's 28, so it's not like he's going around anywhere anytime soon. The Japanese striker Endo. A negative is they're currently in 13th place. I know they're only 11 games in, but it would mean obviously we've got to catch up to the top 4 if we want Champions League football next season. And that wouldn't be too bad if we could be like, it don't matter if we get it this season, we'll just get it next season. Because unfortunately the balance and the finances, they're not looking great for Newcastle. A minus £128 million. The transfer budget was only 70 million this season, which isn't amazing for European football, and it only has a 65% of transfer revenue which is made, so any players we sell, we only get just over half for it, and that's always a worrying sign. The minimum budget guaranteed for next season is 28 million, and the rich benefactor is now an underwriter, and that's because he actually scaled down his funding 3 seasons before this, which they tend to do at Newcastle, I've noticed. So I don't know whether this is a good idea or not. They've got some cracking players, Endo being one of the main ones. They still got Diamonde playing up front. They've got Loran, who we almost went to his club while he was there. Jordan Ross is another really good striker who's 28 and a fantastic striker. So we've got 2 really good strikers. I think it is a good move. There's always going to be some kind of negatives, and we're not walking into Manchester City anytime soon. None of the other clubs that have good sides are doing badly. Liverpool are doing badly, but they've dropped off massively. I think we might go for this. I think I'm going to apply for Newcastle. Yeah, I'm going to apply. 2 more jobs popped up immediately after, but nothing that I thought was worth going for. And the Newcastle fans consider me as the favourite for the role. I guess we really got to make sure that we nail this interview. Meanwhile, Eric Dyer jumped straight back into management, getting the vacant Valencia role. But we will be taking over his former club, Newcastle United, as they offer us the role to become their new manager. So the hunt for the final trophy begins. And I think the biggest problem with our side is the age. A lot of our first team players are already in their 30s. Tactically, we've adapted our system to suit our new side with an attacking midfielder role, ball-playing defenders, and a sweeper keeper. Not to mention, we've gone for a deep-line playmaker instead of a half-back in that centre midfield spot. I am also already feeling the cold, so I need to change my attire as well. I'm going to need to go back to a classic white shirt and black tie to suit the club that we're at, and it's in the northeast of England. We need an overcoat to keep us warm on the touchline. I did also want to put a watch on, but it won't let me with the overcoat, so I'll just stick to put some bling on my fingers instead. Our first game in England didn't go well, considering we scored after a minute because this world-class winger at Everton bagged a hat-trick against us. Our next match is against Chelsea, who are the current champions, top of the league, and has some of the world's best players. They also won the Champions League last season too. And after giving away an early goal, we did eventually manage to salvage an equaliser and grab a draw. Skipping forward to the end of January, we finished 9th in the league phase and have been drawn against Dinamo Zagreb in the playoff round. We've been plodding along in the league table as well and sit just outside the Champions League spots. And we defeated Dinamo Zagreb in the first leg 4-1, and we replicated that same result in the home leg to go through to the round of 16. Going on to face a familiar enemy in Manchester United as we smashed him in the first leg, picking up another 4-1 result. Their striker, who scored by the way, is easily the best striker in the game that I have seen. He is fantastic. But we still knocked them out though, despite them winning the second leg 3-1 and its quarterfinals against Benfica. And for the 4th time, we've got our favourite scoreline in the first leg. 4-1 win. Yet somehow Benfica came back swinging in the away leg and pulled off a shock comeback, eliminating us out of the competition, beating us 6-1, meaning it's not going to be that quick to complete the Pentagon challenge this season. So let's finish this season in the Premier League and hopefully qualify for the Champions League next year. And that's just what we managed to do. We finished in 5th place, which is the last Champions League spot now that the Champions League is split into a bigger thing. Chelsea, though, unbeaten season. They drew 10 games, but an unbeaten season by Chelsea. Mental. They are going to be so difficult to overcome. They got... Look at that. How good is that? I mean, he wasn't the top scorer of the league. That man is Endo, which is our player. He is wanted, however. But he's 29. He's still got a few years left yet. He can't jump, don't get me wrong. But he's a fantastic finisher of the ball. And he's our man. He's our man, and that's the main thing. Ed Malem is another striker that I know that they've got. He's unhappy. I mean... failing to challenge for the champion. You just won you won it last season. Right. But we need to focus on next season now. The Premier League was just getting us qualified for the Champions League. The next step of course, our Pentagon Challenge. We've been given £72 million. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. I might have to do a little bit of cheeky business if I want to find a better squad going into next season. Because job-wise as well, there's not a lot of options there. I could look at going to Juventus or Roma, but neither of the teams are anywhere near as good as the side that we've got right now. And I don't think I'd be silly to leave unless the Chelsea job or a Man City job came up. I think England is probably the best place to stay in terms of European football. I start the season by selling Laurent to Saudi Arabia for £43.5 million, as I'm actually thinking of a change of system. In fact, I sold quite a few squad players that could go for some kind of value in hopes of building my budget up to improve my defence. Because we unfortunately lost Diamonde, who's 34 now, to Barcelona on a free transfer. However, we are also utilising the free transfers ourselves, bringing in a fantastic defensive midfielder who's been playing in Saudi Arabia. But we did also spend the money that we had. We brought in a new keeper. In fact, we've brought in 2. The first one here, Ayinde, Nigerian from West Ham, cost us £44 million. Diego Maurizio also comes in as a starting centre-back now from Arsenal, £33 million there. We've had to go for these signings. We couldn't really go for the big boys because we needed so many players. Regas is actually a player that was here last season. He was on loan with a view to a permanent deal. Tales was the free transfer. John Velandia, though, from Barcelona, £40 million for the other centre-back. So now we've got two good centre-backs coming in. We've lost two centre-backs in the transfer window. Mario Flores is the other goalkeeper. He's a young Mexican goalkeeper that we got for 11 million, so it was worth picking him up because he was so cheap. Then we got two youngsters coming in from homegrown clubs as well. Kelvin Tawi, who plays on the left-hand side. You'll realise why I'm doing that, but he looks like a good prospect for 19 years old. We'll get some game time this year. And Samuel Felix, who is a striker that I've kept my tabs on. He's actually Mexican, but he's been playing at Burnley for a while now. I remember when he was at Santos Laguna when I was in Mexico, and I had my eye on him then. But he's fantastic. His attributes early on are great. I think he'll be our third choice striker. We also had Andy Sloan returning from a loan deal, and he is fantastic and has a great potential. So I think we need to give him some game time. We need to find a role for him. And just so happens he plays naturally on that left wing. And I've got an idea that I want to try. Now, I have been using a variation of the Santos tactic, but I want to kind of move away from that. And I feel like our team is perfectly set up for a 4-4-2 formation. We've got two good defensive midfielders, but I think I'm going to keep them in the midfield right now. We'll just keep it quite simple here. Wingers on attack. I think, to be honest, it's going to be a very basic setup, but I just want to make us really hard to beat. So I feel like putting us with pressing forwards up front is going to make us incredibly difficult to beat, and I think I'm just going to go for a really simple partnership in that midfield of a box-to-box and a ball-winning midfielder both on support. I don't want it to be too complicated. I think it's just going to be as easy as that. Have like wing-backs who are going to bomb forward as well. And will just keep us really solid to beat and try and focus more on that. I think going more attacking and maybe lowering the tempo slightly down, but going a little bit more direct with my 4-4-2, that's going to be the way to go this season. And the tactics seemed like a breath of fresh air, as this finally feels like my team instead of the one I inherited. So let's progress through to the end of the Champions League phase and see if we qualify. Well, it was a really solid campaign and we won all but one game, including a 2-0 win against PSG and a big win against Man City to sit us in second place, only behind Barcelona. We also did a bit of business in January window as well, selling a striker and signing a right midfielder for a very cheap cost. We are in a title race too, with 5 points behind Manchester City, who are in first, but we have a game in hand. And we picked up our first trophy though, as we won the League Cup. But now we shift our focus to the knockouts of the Champions League. And in the round of 16, we played Atalanta in the first leg, which took place in Bergamo, Italy. And they beat us comfortably too, with a 2-0 win. And we even missed a penalty in the game. So the second leg, we really needed a big performance, and especially from our strikers who went goalless in the last leg. And in the second leg, both Ross and Endo picked up a brace and helped us through with a tight 5-4 win on aggregate, giving us Porto in the quarterfinals. And the Portuguese side couldn't handle our high-pressing 4-4-2, and we comfortably won the first leg 3-0 in Porto. And the second leg was even worse for Porto. We smashed them 10-1 on aggregate, with us being the only remaining English side in the semi-final that included both the Milan teams. But could Inter Milan stop us, or would they roll over like Porto did? Well, the first leg, we were 3-0 up by half-time and take a 3-goal advantage to Italy, where we drew despite taking the lead twice, but either way, we are in the Champions League final. One game away from completing the Pentagon Challenge. However, before that, in a less important competition, we still had the chance of winning the Premier League, and we've got 2 games to go. And with a very late winning goal at Molineux, we just need Chelsea to lose and for us to win, and we will win the league on goal difference. And we certainly did our job against Brentford, as we smashed them at home on the final day 6-0 to put the pressure on. And somehow, Chelsea completely bottled it and lost to Arsenal 2-0, meaning we are the Premier League champions on goal difference. But it's time for the Champions League final against Bayern Munich, who have a stacked team and a fantastic strike force. And we are just 90 minutes away from completing the Pentagon Challenge as we walk out for the UEFA Champions League final. And after a season full of fantastic, high-pressing football and huge amounts of goals being scored by our Toon Army, today seemed to be one game too many for our Newcastle side, and unfortunately, we will not be completing the Pentagon Challenge just yet, as we were battered in the final 3-0. And that fifth trophy eludes us for now. The board have given us a decent budget this season, and recruitment is so important this summer, and I'm actually considering selling our star player Endo, who is wanted right now. I know you're thinking I've probably lost my marbles or something, because he has been like the best scorer. I mean, even last season with 26 goals. He has dropped off, although he did pick up 10 more assists compared to the 10 goals he lost out on, and actually had a very similar season in terms of average rating. But he is 30 now. He's only got 2 years left in his deal. He's worth a lot of money, and I could potentially bring in 2 players with that, but definitely replace him with a better suited player for my tactic, because I want to use pressing forwards up front. Whenever we were using pressing forwards, that was working really well. But with only 10 aggression, his pressing forward on attack gives him a 3.5. He's only 3.5 star suitability for that, whereas a 5-star, almost, he was a 5-star as an advanced forward role. And the pressing forward just works better in the system that I'm trying to implement here. So I actually think selling Endo might be the way to go this season. But before a bid comes in, I'm more focused on our defence, and I have a perfect signing confirmed for centre-back, with Lewis Parsons coming in from Brighton, who is left-footed centre-back that we needed. But the bid finally came, and we said goodbye to Endo for £88 million. The player to replace him isn't quite as good, but it has the attributes I feel to suit our system better, and he's from RB Leipzig for £96 million. We won the Charity Shield on penalties, but our first 4 games are tough. We then sold one last player to Bayern Munich and brought in a couple of young defenders with that money who can cover all 3 positions. So with our team lined up in its best 11 this season, Ziccini actually starts on that left back role. So again, with our main aim of the Champions League, let's see how we get on in the league phase. Outside of a wild loss to Manchester United, we win another 7 games and qualify second behind Porto of all sides. In the round of 16, we played Crystal Palace and we defeated them in the first leg at Selhurst Park 2-1. And the second leg at home was a simple victory as we eased Crystal Palace out of the competition with a 2-0 win. The quarterfinal draw once again puts us up against Porto, which went well for us last year. And once the first goal went in from Andy Sloan, it was ours to lose. Which, to be fair, we nearly gave away, allowing Porto to equalise, but Samuel Felix banged in a hat-trick and gave us a 4-1 first leg win. And a 1-0 loss in the second leg sees us through to the semi-finals of the Champions League once again. And it's against another Milan side. The first leg at home only finished 1-0, however. And is that enough to see us through to the final? Well, in the second leg, it was a 1-goal-a-game match again, and once again, it was scored by a Newcastle player. And that 2-0 aggregate win sends us into the Champions League final, this time against Barcelona. And we don't have to focus on the Premier League, as Manchester United have secured the title with games to play. Although, we do have an FA Cup final to play just before the Champions League. So it's a cup final before our really important cup final. And let's hope the Champions League goes a lot better for us than the FA Cup, because there's a good chance I'll be sacked if we don't win it after that 4-0 defeat. Anyway, it's time for the Champions League final, and we are without 2 of our 3 strikers who bagged a total of 56 goals between them this season. A big loss as we attempt to complete the Pentagon Challenge by winning the Champions League final. And against an unrecognisable Barcelona side all these years later, except for one man, that being Lamine Yamal, who is still around. But this is a fantastic opponent, and we will have to be at the top of our game to lift the trophy to avoid back-to-back final defeats. And the scores actually stayed 0-0 into the second half when Araujo hopped on a loose ball and smashed it past the keeper. But what felt like seconds later, Barcelona with a route 1 ball over the top of our defence went through and equalised. The game went to extra time, and when neither side was able to break each other down, it was penalties. And our wildest nightmares come true as we missed our first 2 penalty kicks, with Barcelona scoring their first and a chance to put them 2-0 up in the shootout through Lamine Yamal. but Mario Flores makes a huge save. We finally score our first penalty, and it's Mario Flores once again with a massive save to bring the scores level in the shootout. Another Newcastle penalty goes in, and it's a Barcelona player who steps up, and his penalty smashes off the crossbar and out. Meaning if we score this penalty, we win the shootout, and centre-back Lewis Parsons steps up and smashes it home, and Newcastle United are champions of Europe. But most importantly, we have now won all 5 Champions Leagues in our mission around the world to have completed the Pentagon Challenge, which surely makes me now the greatest manager of all time. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to not miss the next challenge that we take on.